Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Evil DM here, back with another video about Savage Worlds SWADE Edition. Everyone seems to be enjoying the videos I've been doing so far, the two of them that is, and getting some good feedback. I appreciate that. Everyone leaving comments, positive comments, constructive comments, things they want to see, things they want to hear on the channel. So it's been a good time. But let's jump into things today and get right into the next part of this, which is talking about races, and then doing a little bit of a custom race, showing you it's pretty easy to do it. And Savage Worlds is not that difficult, so let's jump right into it. If we go to page 12 of the book, you'll see here that we start the standard races that are in the book. And obviously check with your GM if they're going to use these races, because a lot of them don't really fit into every setting that the GM is planning. So obviously an android's not going to work in a fantasy world, but though if you can have an argument to the GM about what if an android would be in a fantasy world, go for it. Some GMs like arguments and like debates, and if you can convince them, why not? I mean, if someone gives me a good reason for an android being in a D&D type world, I don't see why not. If they can make it work, because if they get hurt or something like that, there's not going to be parts for them and things like that. But anyway, you have your Android, which tells you how the bonuses and everything you get. You have to customize it by going to page 18, which we will do, but not for Android. Just a second here. We have the Aquarium Race, which is pretty much an underwater-like race, which could fit somewhat into a fantasy world. It fits into a modern-day world, too. Could be your Aquaman if you're playing a superhero game. Who knows? Avion, that could be your Birdman, Hawkman, things like that. If you're playing a superhero game, it could be in a fantasy world too. It could be in a Flash Gordon world. They have that supplement too. I just picked that up. Dwarves, typical fantasy dwarves. You know, elves. Your elves there. Half elves and half folk, which are pretty much your halfling equivalent in D&D. We also have our humans, which most of the games will default to. And generally, those games will have their, I would say, their adjustments to humans. Some of them don't. Like East Texas University really doesn't have much of an adjustment. Just you're a Texan. That should be an adjustment because Texans are great. And it really depends on the setting, and it also depends on the GM, which we'll get over to. We'll get into that in just a minute. We have the Rakashians or Rakazans. Rakans? I don't know how to pronounce it, but they're the cat-like people. I was looking at this and reading some information, and some people had some ideas about taking this race and modifying it slightly to do a Thundercats type Savage World thing. That could work. I mean, you'd have to get rid of the Bloodthirsty and things like that, but it might work. It might be a fun game having a Thundercats game. Just it'd be a one-shot, though. But and the Saurons, which is kind of like the dragon lizardmen type race. And then we have an example of making races here, but this is where we go to make the races. Now, how does this kind of work? This is really simple. According to the rules, you start with 2 positive racial abilities. Anything else you decide after that, you have to take a negative racial ability to match it up. So think of it as a hindrance and an edge type system going on here. So for this example, I'm going to do a race called Gatorites. Pretty much alligator race. Now for that, I did a little searching around and I found a picture, and usually that's how I do races. I'll find a picture of the race, and based on the race, I'll start molding it how I want to mold, and I will give you an idea what it looks like. I'll just show you a little picture of it. So basing it on that, we know it is an alligator. We know they are strong. We know they have a thick hide. They can swim fast. They have a locking jaw bite. They have to be in water every once in a while. So what could we do here? So based on that, he needs to have the semi-aquatic right here, listed right here. And the 1/2 after it means how many value of points it would be. So when I'm building it, the book says you get 2 free points. Well, you can make it whatever you want. You don't have to have 2 free points. You can make it 4 free points. You're the GM, you do what you want. If you want to follow the book directly, great. Do it that way. So these points over here are the value of what you're picking. Like if you pick an edge or something like a minor or a major, it's worth 1 or 2 points. Just like here, 1 or 2 points. Sometimes they're 3, sometimes they're 4. And in between there, they'll just kind of how many times you could be taken. So it says aquatic can only be taken once. You either be semi-aquatic or aquatic. You can't be semi-aquatic and then take aquatic on top of that. That's just weird. Armor, you could take 3 times because you can thicken your scales or your skin or your armor skinish 3 times to get the bonus. You basically is unlimited. You can just keep taking it as many times as you need to do it to make the character class, the race itself work. So back to my example. So he's an alligator. He's semi-aquatic. We're gonna take semi-aquatic, and he can hold his breath for up to 15 minutes before checking for drowning. So I decided that in this campaign that I'm gonna go a little bit closer to what an alligator is like. So I said he's semi-aquatic and they could stay underwater for about 2 hours. Generally, what an alligator in real life can do. I did some research on some alligators, and generally the consensus is they could stay underwater in the right conditions for about a total of 2 hours. So I made it 2 hours. Again, I'm the GM. I decide what I want to do. Next, I decided he was going to have a toughness. So we're going to go down to toughness. This character has hardened skin, scales, and extremely dense tissue that increases his toughness by +1. All right. So now we got our 2 points right there. But I decided I want to give him some more because he just seems kind of basic and boring the other way, right? So I gave him an increased strength of D6 to start, and that would fall under the attribute increase right here. So that's 2 more points. So he gets a D6 to start right away, which also increases his maximum to a D12 +1. Let's see what else I gave him here. That's 2 points. I gave him a bite because he has the sharp jaws, and alligators are famous for just biting and holding on to things. So he gets that. That's another 1 point. And size, which we'll scroll down to right here. Size. You can get that up to 3 times. But I gave him a size +1 because he is larger than average. Most alligators are, when they're at their largest length, is 9 to 15 feet. So I felt that a size +1 would give him an advantage over normal humanoids or human beings. So that's 6 points total out of all those I just gave him. We get 2 to start. Now we have 4 points that we have to kind of balance out. Now for that, it's pretty simple. When you look at the negative racial abilities, it's just the opposite of the positive ones. These things are taking away, giving you hindrances, so to speak, so you can balance out the actual race class itself. So I got big. This race is particularly large in the world where most others aren't. He subtracts 2 from his trait rolls when using equipment that isn't specifically designed for his race and cannot wear the armor or clothing that is not designed for his race. Equipment, food, and clothing cost double list price. Because he has a bonus for being a big-sized character, he also gets the negative that goes in hand with that, because obviously he's not going to be able to fit into normal standard stuff because he's larger. So with the good, you get the bad. That's my reasoning behind that. Dependency is the last thing I picked, which is another 2 points. I'm sorry, big was -2. So we have 2 points left. Dependency, this race must consume or have contact with some sort of relatively common substance for an hour out of 24 hours, such as creature-based. So I put it down as dependency. They need to have bathed in water once a day for at least 10 minutes to survive. Generally, you'd want an hour, but sometimes in a campaign, you're not going to be able to have the time for an hour to do in your campaign world while playing. You could just say we did it, but generally, you want something reasonable. And I thought 10 minutes was reasonable of bathing time for an alligator to want to be in the water. Now, if he doesn't get into the water within the 24-hour period, he starts suffering fatigue loss, and he starts getting negatives until basically he passes out and then dies. Pretty much he starts taking damage, starts taking wounds, and then boom, bleh, he dies. So that's a custom race I designed up just to show you it's pretty simple to do. And obviously what you can do with the standard races in the book, we'll go back to that right here. With the standard races in the book, you can modify these however you fit for your campaign. Like if you wanted a campaign and it relatively makes sense to have humans, you can adjust the humans to fit whatever you want. So let's say that in your campaign world, they're humans from the South. You want to give them some certain skills and abilities because they're used to being, I don't know, outdoors in the South, and we love the sun, which most people in the South do. We do like the sun. And we're used to it, and we're used to the heat. Maybe you want to give them some ability to resist heat. But if they go to the cold, they're friggin' cold and they can't handle it. Like we here in Texas, when we go up north into the cold weather, when it gets into cold weather here, we're like wearing jackets and coats and stuff like that. And y'all up there in the north are like, what? It's only like 50, and we're like, dude, that's cold. But yeah, half folk. If you don't like what they have here, like for elves, all thumbs have an inherent dislike of mechanical objects and thus have all thumbs hindrance. They shun most mechanical items and designs. I don't see elves having that at all. I would probably remove that and put something else. I always thought of elves as being technologically advanced, even in fantasy worlds. They have the top technology, they have the top ability for things. They are mostly geniuses in what they build, for the most part. Unless you want to make this like a certain branch of elves, like wood elves or forest elves, ones that just kind of hang out in the trees. Again, you can do sub races of these races to make it more interesting. Half elves, you can make the half elves based on a certain half elven race or half human race that you want. You can make up your own half orc, half this humans and whatever races, halflings, that'd be half folk, but you can do whatever you want. And again, you're the GM. It does suggest right in the beginning, if you don't like something about these races, go ahead and modify it to your liking for your campaign. It's the great thing about Savage Worlds. A lot of the stuff that you do, as long as you kind of balance it out with the guidelines that they give you, won't break the game too much at all. I don't think it'll break the game at all, to be honest. Again, removing all thumbs and adding some other negative modifier that I thought would be better for elves is not going to break the game. Removing the negative modifiers from a race completely, leaving just positive, might make them a little overpowered, but it's still going to have a good time overall. I don't think it's going to be too much. But anyway, with that said, I'm going to head out. Hopefully you've enjoyed this one. Let me know in the comments below. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't before. Hit that bell notification so you get the latest video coming out. And check out the links I have below also as well. RollHigherDie.com will be doing an actual play on Savage Worlds eventually when we finish up our Star Trek game. You can check out our Star Trek game here on my channel live with some video. We're actually doing live video as opposed to just audio. So head over and look for Star Trek Reliant. And that's all I have to say for this week. So keep original, keep it old school, and good night, everybody.